Somewhere in the world right now, someone is pouring a drink without thinking twice about it. And what they're doing is older than agriculture, older than pottery, older than writing itself. It might even be older than our own species. The story of why humans drink doesn't start in a brewery or a vineyard. It starts about 10 million years ago on a forest floor with a small primate picking up a piece of fruit that had been sitting on the ground a little too long. In 2014, a biologist at UC Berkeley named Robert Dudley published a theory that reframed the entire question. He called it the Drunken Monkey Hypothesis, his idea. When ripe fruit falls to the ground and sits there, natural yeast gets into the sugars and starts fermenting it, producing small amounts of ethanol. Primates that could smell and locate that fermenting fruit had a real survival advantage. More calories, easier to find. Over millions of years, the ones who were drawn to that faint alcoholic smell simply outcompeted the ones who weren't. We didn't evolve a taste for alcohol after we became human. We inherited it from ancestors who were sniffing out boozy fruit millions of years before humans existed at all. So by the time actual humans show up, the craving is already built in. The only thing left to figure out was how to make it happen on purpose. That answer showed up in 2018 when archaeologists excavating a cave called Raqefet near modern-day Haifa in Israel found something unexpected. The cave had been used around 13,000 years ago by the Natufians, a group that lived right on the edge between hunting and gathering and full-on farming. Carved into the bedrock were stone mortars, and when a Stanford-led research team analyzed the residue inside them, they found the chemical signature of malted wheat and barley that had been deliberately soaked, allowed to sprout, and left to ferment. That's beer brewed in a cave 13,000 years ago. Here's what makes that genuinely strange. The Natufians hadn't invented farming yet. They were gathering wild grain by hand, not growing it. And yet they'd already worked out a fairly involved multi-step brewing process: malting, mashing, fermenting, for a plant they weren't even cultivating. The old assumption was always that alcohol came after civilization. People settled down, started farming, and eventually stumbled into fermentation as a side effect. Raqefet Cave suggests the opposite order entirely, and it's not an isolated case. About 1,000 years later, in what's now southeastern Turkey, a hunter-gatherer society built something genuinely enormous at a site called Göbekli Tepe, massive carved stone pillars, some over 10 tons, arranged in deliberate circles decorated with animal carvings. This was constructed by people who had no permanent homes, no farming, and no pottery yet. For years, archaeologists couldn't explain why nomadic groups would organize the serious labor required to move and carve stones that heavy. Then, researchers found large limestone troughs at the site, some able to hold over 150 liters of liquid, and residue analysis turned up calcium oxalate, a compound that forms specifically during the soaking and fermenting of grain. It's not proof beyond doubt. Researchers themselves describe it as preliminary evidence, but it's a genuinely compelling sign that beer, or something close to it, was part of whatever brought people to the site to build something this ambitious. Which brings up a real question archaeologists have argued about for decades. Why did humans start farming at all? Patrick McGovern, a biomolecular archaeologist at the University of Pennsylvania, and probably the world's leading expert on ancient alcohol, has spent years making the case that the answer isn't bread. Bread takes real effort. Grinding grain, kneading dough, controlling a fire precisely enough to bake it. Beer is almost embarrassingly simple by comparison. Soak grain in water, leave it alone, and wild yeast does the rest. If early humans were choosing what was worth the effort of deliberately growing, McGovern's argument is that the pull toward alcohol may have been the stronger motivator, meaning farming might not have started because people wanted more bread. It might have started because they wanted more beer. The evidence gets much more specific a few thousand years later. At a Neolithic village called Jiahu in China's Hainan province, archaeologists analyzed residue inside pottery jars and found a fermented drink made from rice, honey, and hawthorn fruit and grapes, dating to somewhere around 7,000 to 6,600 BCE, making it the oldest chemically confirmed alcoholic recipe found anywhere on Earth. And it wasn't crude, it was a genuine blend. Multiple ingredients combined with intention, not some accidental byproduct someone stumbled into. By the time you reach ancient Egypt, beer isn't a curiosity anymore. It's infrastructure. The laborers who built the pyramids at Giza were paid partly in beer, several liters a day, alongside bread. That wasn't a perk. It was a meaningful part of their actual wages. And there was a practical reason beyond taste. Water drawn straight from the Nile thus wasn't always safe, but the brewing process, boiling, fermentation, made beer far less likely to carry disease. On top of that, it was calorically dense, which mattered enormously for people hauling limestone blocks in desert heat all day. One drink was functioning as payment, as a safer alternative to the local water, and as a meal, more or less simultaneously. It didn't stop at the practical either. The Egyptians credited the god Osiris with the invention of beer and treated it as a genuine gift to humanity. It shows up in temple offerings, burial goods, and this part is real, actual medical texts where physicians mixed herbs into beer and prescribed it for everything from digestive trouble to infections. A single drink was doing the job of a paycheck, a water filter, a meal, and a prescription all at once. So here's the actual timeline, and it's a strange one to sit with. Roughly 10 million years ago, a distant primate ancestor developed a taste for fermenting fruit because it meant more calories more often. 13,000 years ago, people who hadn't even invented farming yet were brewing beer inside a cave. Around 11,000 years ago, a hunter-gatherer society may have organized some of the first monumental architecture on Earth, partly around gathering to drink together. 9,000 years ago, there's a fully documented, deliberate recipe. By 5,000 years ago, entire civilizations were running significant parts of their economy and their religion through it. Alcohol isn't something that showed up after humans built civilization. There's a real evidence-backed argument that it's part of what got civilization built in the first place. Every time someone cracks open a drink today, they're continuing a habit that predates their own species having a name for itself. The ingredients changed, the process got more precise, but the underlying pull is the exact same one that sent a distant ancestor crawling toward a piece of fermenting fruit on a forest floor, several million years before anyone was around to write any of this down. If you want to go deeper on any of this, the actual studies, the researchers, the sites, subscribe, because this channel exists to dig up exactly this kind of thing.